I shouldn't remember the exact way her voice carried across the crackling fire, but I do. It was soft, like she was afraid of being overheard, though no one else was around. Just the two of us, sitting close enough that the flames painted her face in uneven light. My aunt had gone inside hours ago, claiming she was tired. The others had drifted away, too. But she stayed, Claire. My aunt's best friend, though the word friend never seemed to capture the weight she carried in a room. She wasn't the kind of woman who needed attention. Attention just rearranged itself around her. I was 24, still learning how to read people, yet with her it wasn't about reading. It was about noticing. The subtle press of her shoulder when she leaned closer to hear me, the way her laugh came quieter as the night thinned, the unhurried way she sipped her wine as though nothing could rush her. The fire snapped, sending sparks upward. I glanced at her and found her already watching me. She didn't look away. "You're quiet," she said finally, tilting her head, her hair catching a little gold in the firelight. "I'm just listening." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "To what?" She smiled faintly, not mocking, more like she was testing whether I'd answer honestly. I hesitated. The silence between us grew full, the kind that made the air heavier. "To you." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but not in disapproval. More like she was trying to decide if I meant it. Then she laughed under her breath, and her hand, resting on the arm of her chair, brushed against mine. Not fully, just a light graze, a line of warmth that stayed even after she moved. I should have pulled back. I didn't. The fire popped again, and I realized I hadn't breathed in a while. She leaned back, drawing her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "It's colder than I thought it would be tonight." The night pressed in around us, cool air creeping over skin, the scent of smoke clinging to our clothes, the quiet thrum of crickets just beyond the reach of the firelight. I swallowed, too aware of the space between our chairs. Too aware that it wasn't much space at all. "Do you want me to grab another blanket?" I asked. Her gaze flicked to mine, sharp for a moment, then softened. "No, just stay here." Her lips curved slightly as she looked back at the fire. Then, after a pause that felt far longer than it was, she added, "Keep me warm, just this once." The words hung there. They weren't said carelessly. She let them rest between us, testing their weight. My hand twitched at my side, torn between the safety of stillness and the pull of something I didn't want to name. I shifted, leaning just slightly toward her, and the scent of her perfume, something faint, floral, threaded with smoke, wrapped around me. She didn't move away. But just as the moment stretched into something dangerous, the back door creaked open behind us. A square of light cut across the lawn. We both froze. Her hand, almost without thought, touched my wrist under the shadow of the fire pit. A fleeting press, quick enough to be missed if anyone looked out. But not quick enough for me to ignore. I turned toward her. She held my gaze, her face unreadable in the glow. And then, the kitchen lights spilled briefly across the yard, then vanished as the door shut. Whoever had come out never stepped off the porch, and a moment later their footsteps retreated inside. But the interruption had already snapped the thread between us. Claire released my wrist and reached for her glass instead, as if nothing had happened. She swirled the last sip of wine, though she didn't drink it. I leaned back, forcing my breathing to even out, trying to look as if the fire had simply lulled me into silence. She didn't look at me. Not right away. Only after a long pause did she tilt her head, her profile sharp against the flames. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly. "Who?" Her lips pressed together before she answered. "Me. At your age." She smiled faintly, but it wasn't an easy smile. "Too eager to feel things deeply. Too sure you can handle them." The words should have landed like a warning. Instead, they curled around me, dangerous and inviting. "You don't think I can?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward me. A longer look this time, lingering before she turned back to the fire. "That's not the question you should be asking." I let the silence sit. It was easier than pressing her, easier than admitting how much I wanted her to keep talking. The fire died lower, shadows folding in closer. She tucked the shawl tighter around her shoulders, and for a moment she looked smaller, less untouchable. That confidence she always wore like armor slipped, just slightly. "Your aunt and I, we've been friends for almost 20 years, she said, her voice softer now. "We've seen each other through things. Marriages, divorces. Nights like this." Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass, the knuckles pale. I wanted to ask what kind of nights. Instead, I said, "You don't talk much about yourself. There's not much worth talking about." I laughed, and it startled her enough that she glanced at me sharply. "That's not true," I said. "You." I stopped myself. But it was too late. Her eyebrow lifted. "I what?" The fire cracked, loud in the quiet. I shifted in my chair, heat rushing up the back of my neck. "You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need anyone. But you wouldn't be here if that was really true." The words sat between us too raw. I braced for her to pull back, to end the conversation. Instead, she studied me. And in her eyes, just for a flicker, I saw something that wasn't confidence at all. It was recognition. She set the empty glass aside, leaning forward, elbows on her knees. The movement brought her closer, close enough that I felt the warmth of her body competing with the fire. She smelled faintly of smoke and some perfume that had nearly faded after the long night. Her hand brushed mine again, not accidental this time, resting for the briefest second before sliding away. "You shouldn't notice things like that," she murmured. "I can't help it." Her breath left her in something between a sigh and a laugh. She shook her head, eyes on the flames, as though avoiding mine was safer. But when she leaned back, her shoulder grazed mine. She didn't move it. Neither did I. The fire sank lower, glowing embers painting everything in a softer light. I felt her shift beside me, the fabric of her shawl whispering against my arm. She didn't speak. Neither did I. And in that silence, thick, unbroken, I felt it, the bond tightening. Not spoken, not named, but undeniable. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then settled lightly on my shoulder. Just the weight of it, nothing more. But her thumb traced once, absent-mindedly, across the fabric of my shirt before she pulled away. She cleared her throat, as if to cover the gesture. "We should put out the fire," she said. But she didn't stand. She stayed right there beside me. The fire was nearly gone, just a low red glow under a skin of ash. Claire hadn't moved, though every few minutes she shifted as if she might stand, then stayed seated. "I should go in," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "Yeah," I murmured. Neither of us moved. Her shoulder brushed mine again, deliberate now. I turned my head, and she was closer than I realized. Her hair caught the faint light, and I had the sudden, disorienting urge to reach out and tuck a strand behind her ear. My hand twitched but stayed at my side. Her eyes found mine. We sat there, not speaking, not breathing too loud, until the sharp ping of a phone shattered the stillness. She flinched. Her bag was beside her chair. She dug through it quickly, too quickly, and pulled out her phone. The glow lit her face in cold blue. "Your aunt," she muttered, scanning the message. Relief passed over her features, but then she stiffened, thumb hovering over the screen. "She's asking if I'm still outside." We both froze. The question carried weight, too much weight. "Just say you're coming in," I whispered. Claire hesitated, then typed a reply, locked the screen, and set the phone face down on the table. For a moment, her hand lingered there, pale against the dark wood, trembling just slightly. "She worries," she said finally. "She always has." But her tone wasn't about worry. It was about being caught. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to steady myself. The night pressed in harder, the crickets louder, every second sharper than it should have been. "She'd never think," I began. Claire's laugh was quiet, short, bitter almost. "That her best friend is sitting out here with her nephew closer than she should be?" The words cracked the air between us. She looked at me then, eyes sharp, almost daring me to deny it. I couldn't. My chest tightened. Instead, I whispered, "We haven't done anything." "Not yet," she said, and her voice caught on the last word. The silence after that was unbearable. My heart hammered. Her hand gripped the shawl at her chest, knuckles white, as though holding herself back. I shifted closer without meaning to, the gravel crunching softly under my chair. She didn't move away. Her breath hitched, audible in the night. We sat, inches apart, either of us retreating. The fire spat one last spark, sending a flare of orange across her face. Her lips parted, the smallest invitation. I leaned in. Just enough to feel her breath brush against my cheek. My hand lifted, hovering near her arm, not quite touching. The space between us felt unbearable, impossible. Her eyes flicked down, then up again, locking on mine. "Don't," she whispered. But her voice wavered, betraying her. I stopped. The air between us was molten, every nerve pulled taut. Her hand rose, unsteady, and landed lightly on my knee. Just her fingertips. A fragile, fleeting anchor. We froze like that, locked in place, our closeness louder than any words. Inside, a floorboard creaked. Both our heads turned, breath caught. But no one came out. When we looked back at each other, the distance had already collapsed. Not a kiss, not yet, but the shape of one hanging in the space between us, impossible to ignore. We didn't move away. We stayed. The fire had gone out completely, leaving only the faint glow of embers and the echo of what we hadn't done. The night pressed closer, heavy and cold, but I barely noticed it. All I felt was her, the nearness of her body, the warmth radiating even through the thin barrier of our clothes. Claire shifted, the shawl slipping slightly off one shoulder. Instinct moved me before thought did. I reached up, brushed the fabric back into place. My fingers grazed the bare skin of her collarbone, hot against my hand in the cool night. She went very still. When I started to pull away, she caught my wrist. Not hard, not desperate, just enough to stop me. Her eyes lifted to mine, and in them I saw something raw, stripped of the careful composure she always wore. "Do you know how dangerous this is?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice rougher than I expected. "That's why I can't stop thinking about it." Her breath shuddered out. She looked away, shaking her head, but her hand still held mine. "You're too young. You don't understand what happens after." "Then explain it." I leaned closer, close enough that her hair brushed my cheek. "Because I don't see you walking away." That landed. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes dropped to my mouth for the briefest second before darting away. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The world had narrowed to her, the line of her jaw, the rise and fall of her chest, the trembling in her hand that still clutched mine. "Claire!" My voice was low, almost unrecognizable. I reached with my free hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The softness of it slid against my fingers, and I let them linger longer than I should have, tracing the curve of her cheek before I pulled back. She closed her eyes at the touch, just for a heartbeat. When she opened them again, the fight in them was thinner, fraying at the edges. "I can't want this," she said, her voice breaking. "Not with you." "Then don't say it," I whispered back. "Show me." The silence after was unbearable. I thought she'd push me away, that the moment would collapse under its own weight. But instead, she leaned forward. Not much, just enough that her forehead nearly touched mine, our breaths mingling in the chilled air. Every sense sharpened, the faint smoke clinging to her shawl, the tremor in her exhale, the warmth of her thigh brushing against mine. Her lips were so close I could almost taste the wine still lingering on them. "This is a mistake," she murmured. But she didn't move back. Her hand slid from my wrist to my chest, resting flat against it, feeling the thrum of my heartbeat. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there. "Then let it be our mistake." Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, unguarded. A line had been crossed, and both of us knew it. There would be no pretending after this. She tilted her head, the barest fraction. "Enough." I leaned in. The space between us vanished. And the back door banged open, flooding the yard with light. We jerked apart, breathless, caught between what we almost did and what we couldn't undo. The door slammed, light spilling across the yard. We jerked apart, faces half-turned, trying to look casual. My aunt stepped out, rubbing her arms against the chill. "You two are still out here?" Her eyes scanned the dying fire pit, then me, then Claire. "Too quick. Too searching." Claire's voice came first, smooth, practiced. "We lost track of time. Talking." My aunt nodded, but her gaze lingered, suspicion flickering like the last ember in the fire. "Well, don't freeze out here. Come in before you catch something." She didn't wait for us to answer, just turned and went back inside. The door shut, the light vanished, but the air didn't feel dark anymore. It felt charged. My heart thundered. Claire's shoulders stiffened, her shawl slipping again. She didn't fix it this time. "That," she whispered, "was too close." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "She didn't see anything." Her eyes snapped to mine sharp, but her hand trembled as she reached for the empty wineglass. "She saw enough. She knows me. She'll—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "She'll what?" I asked. Claire set the glass down hard, the sound breaking the fragile quiet. "She'll know what I'm thinking." The admission hung between us. My chest tightened. "What are you thinking?" I asked. Her breath caught. She pushed back her chair, rising quickly, almost knocking it over. The shawl slipped to the ground, forgotten. I stood too, instinct pulling me closer. "Claire! Don't," she said, holding up a hand. But it shook. She took a step back, but the fire pit hemmed her in. No escape, not really. Her body trembled, not from the cold. "Do you understand what would happen if she found out? If anyone did?" I moved closer slowly, like approaching something fragile. "I don't care." She laughed once, low, bitter. "You say that now." I reached for her arm. She flinched, then stilled when my fingers brushed her sleeve. The fabric was cool, but beneath it her skin was warm, pulsing with life. She closed her eyes, as though the touch itself was a confession. "I've been alone for a long time," she said, voice unsteady. "Longer than I'll admit. And I thought I was fine with it. Until you started looking at me like that." Her eyes opened, meeting mine. Raw. Unprotected. "You don't know what that does," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "It makes you feel seen." Her lips parted, the faintest sound escaping. Not a word, just a breath. My hand slid down, finding hers, fingers threading through before I could stop myself. She didn't pull away. The air between us was molten. Her hand trembled in mine, but she gripped back, hard, like she was drowning. And then she stepped closer. Just one step, but it brought her body against mine, her face so near I could feel the heat of her skin, the faint brush of her breath against my neck. "This can't last," she murmured, her voice breaking. "It'll ruin something." "Then let it." Her forehead leaned into my chest, the soft weight of her resting there. I felt every heartbeat, hers against mine, uneven, desperate. My hand rose, threading into her hair, holding her there. Neither of us moved for a long moment. The night swallowed everything else, just her, just me, pressed too close, too far gone. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet, though no tears had fallen. She looked at me like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. "We can't go back now," she whispered. And she was right. We stood there, caught in the gravity of each other. Her forehead had only just left my chest, but her body was still close, far too close for the words she'd spoken. I should have let her go. Should have stepped back, broken the tension before it swallowed us whole. But I didn't. Neither did she. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint chirp of crickets and the soft drag of her breath. Her shawl lay forgotten on the ground, and I'd bent to pick it up, more to steady myself than anything else. When I held it out, she didn't take it. Instead, she reached for my wrist again, fingers trembling as they wrapped around me. Not pulling me closer, not yet, but not letting me retreat either. Claire! I whispered, her name tasting fragile in my mouth. Her eyes lifted, dark and searching, firelight catching the flecks of gold in them. She looked at me like she wanted to say everything and nothing at once. This is wrong, she breathed, but her voice betrayed her. It cracked, unconvincing. Then why are you still here? She blinked, and a tear threatened, though it never fell. My free hand rose, hesitant, then brushed a strand of hair back from her cheek. My knuckles grazed her skin, warm, soft, impossibly real. She leaned into it, the faintest tilt, her cheek resting against my hand for just a second too long. I felt her breath, quick and uneven, as she whispered, "Because I don't know how to walk away." The words undid me. I stepped in, closing the last of the space, until the line between us was no longer space but heat. Her body pressed against mine, her hands sliding up my arm, gripping my shoulder as though anchoring herself. Her face hovered inches from mine, her lips parted. My heart hammered so loud I was sure she could hear it. "Tell me not to," I whispered, my mouth so close to hers that the words brushed her skin. She shut her eyes. For a moment I thought she would say it, that she'd pull us back from the edge. But when she opened them again, there was no hesitation left. Only clarity. "I can't," she said. And then she leaned in. Our lips didn't crash, didn't burn. It was softer, slower, like she was afraid the world might shatter if we pushed too hard. But it was enough. More than enough. Every nerve in my body lit up, every fear and doubt drowned in the simple truth of her mouth against mine. When we finally broke apart, she stayed close, her forehead against mine, her breath ragged. "This doesn't fix anything," she whispered. "No," I admitted. "But it's real." Her hand tightened in my shirt, pulling me just slightly closer again, as if to test whether I'd resist. I didn't. And in that moment, messy and imperfect as it was, we both knew the choice had already been made. We understood each other fully now, loneliness, risk, regret, desire, all tangled, all undeniable. There was no turning back. The kiss lingered in the silence long after it ended. We stood there, fire gone to nothing but embers, the night cool against our flushed skin. Claire didn't move right away, and neither did I. It felt like if we let go too soon, the world would fold back in and erase everything. Finally, she drew a breath, shaky but steadying, and stepped back just enough to look at me. Her eyes searched mine, still stormed with doubt but softer now, warmer. "You know what this means," she murmured. "That I don't care?" I said, voice rough but certain. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "That it won't be simple." "I don't want simple." I reached for her hand, slow, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Our fingers laced, her grip tentative at first, then firmer. The feel of it grounded me, real, undeniable. She sighed, a sound half weary, half relieved, and leaned against me. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder, her hair brushing my jaw. I held still, afraid any sudden movement would break the fragile peace. "You're too young for this," she whispered, though her body relaxed against mine. "Maybe," I admitted. "But I know what I want." Her silence stretched, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was full, like the quiet after a storm. She pressed closer, the curve of her body fitting against mine as though we'd done this before, as though it wasn't the first time. I lifted my hand, tracing the line of her arm before resting it gently on her back. She melted into it, exhaling against my neck. The fire pit was dark now, smoke curling faintly upward, but the warmth between us didn't fade. "Claire," I whispered, almost afraid to break the moment. I kissed the top of her head, a simple press of lips against her hair. Nothing more. It felt more intimate than anything else we'd done. She closed her eyes, her fingers tightening around mine. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I won't. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow, too." That earned a quiet laugh from her, soft and unguarded. She pulled back just enough to meet my gaze, her hand still caught in mine. The firelight was gone, but I didn't need it, Her face was etched into me. I don't know where this goes, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Then we'll figure it out together. Something shifted in her then, her shoulders loosening, the faint lines of resistance easing. She let out a long breath and leaned into me again, this time fully, without holding back. I wrapped both arms around her, pulling her in close. She didn't resist. For the first time that night, she seemed to rest, to let herself be held. And I knew, whatever came after, whatever risks or complications, we were no longer circling something unnamed. We had stepped into it together. The night wrapped around us, quiet, cool, infinite. Her hand in mine, her head against my chest, her breath steadying into mine. We stayed like that, not speaking, not needing to. Because at last, we understood each other completely.